Hi there, and welcome again to another edition of Peninsula Players Presents the History of Peninsula Players Theatre. And I'm here once again with Audie. Hello, Audie.
Hey, Greg.
They start planning for a 1948 season.
1948 season. Caroline is still living in Rome and doesn't know when she's going to be back, but she does return to visit, and she hopes to produce Anna Christie and the Barretts of Wimpole Street, is what the Advocate reports in May of 1948. Neither of which are
No, subject to
done.
change.
Subject to change.
Yes.
And Rudy is unable to return because he's performing in A Streetcar Named Desire, and I Jean is, I believe, still performing on Broadway as well. And Richard is in New York, and he's returning from New York because he has to meet an apprentice there that Caroline and Rodian met in Italy, who they encouraged to come to Peninsula Players. So Richard's in New York to greet Aldo Fortunato and bring him to North County.
I love that his name was Aldo Fortunato because we, of course, have had Sean and Linda Fortunato at the Players for many, many, many seasons, and our audiences know them well.
Oh, just yes. Oh,
So, so they open their season,
they
the
they
48th season.
they go big. So they open with a show that requires the entire company of 23 to 28. I Two different reference numbers in the articles that I read.
Both of them are large
Well,
numbers.
large numbers, and they're with even continuing with their more ambitious season. They're opening on July 1st, so it's technically makes it the longest season they've ever had because it's running from July 1st to August 6th. Oh no, September 6th. I'm sorry. So that is 51 performances within that span of time is what they're going for.
Hmm.
So the festival the previous year was so successful that they've extended it beyond 2 weeks. So they're going to perform a show and get up on their feet the first 3 weeks of the season, and then they're going to go into performances 6 days a week for the remainder of the season.
So, but at the beginning here with Idiot's Delight, they brought in a choreographer for that first
They
show,
did. They brought in
Jean
Jean
Leslie.
Leslie, who was a cabaret artist, and she wanted to be a part of the Peninsula Players because she wanted to develop her acting skills some more. So she would present cabaret acts and do monologues and comedic um, routines, but she really wanted to grow, and which becomes a real theme because that's why Rudy Bond applied. He wanted to stretch and grow. Where else do you do 10 characters in 10 weeks? And
And
um,
I also want to mention that that still continues today. That at the Players now we do 5 shows in a
mhm,
season, but we try to carry people through many shows. So a lot of performers get to do roles that they typically might not be able to do back where they came from. And that's exciting for them to
it is.
grow and stretch like that.
It is. And that's also the first season we see Paul Valentine with the theater company too. And when you're ready, we'll talk about Paul.
Oh, okay. But also in Idiot's Delight, Marianne Collins and Eddie Collins played piano and clarinet,
They did, and they're from a musical family, so that's what Marianne went to school for, and she helped with the festival that the Centorama in Milwaukee, and her and Eddie both continue to be part of the players' companies, helping when we do new musicals and little parts. So,
and they have an interesting hot dog connection.
yes, they do. So they are the grandchildren of Oscar Mayer. And her father, Edward Collins, was also a composer. And there were a lot of social events that happened at the Collins home for concerts in the house and other things that company members would go enjoy. Um,
Which was pretty
so
close to the
it was
Players.
very close, yes, up on the hill slope and just up a little bit. So
Uh, And then after Idiot's Delight and that very large cast performed, we went on for a few more shows before the festival.
Yes, and Jim McKenzie has come back, so he has kind of fallen in love with Peninsula Players. He had such a wonderful experience the first time, and has said in quotes that when it just becomes ingrained in you, and so that love affair that he has with the theater is established, and he's in the next show, The Milky Way, where a milkman finds himself becoming a boxer. So it's a bit of a comedy, and had been made into films several times. And then we go into something more classical again with Camille. And this time we have Simon Scott as the lover, as opposed to Leo, and Caroline playing the leads. So they
Mhm.
mixed it up a little bit. Um, and then we also continue on within that. And then once we get to the middle of July, it kicks off the shows 6 nights a week for all of August. So
And
that's,
there was one more show before the biography,
oh,
right?
biography, yes. And that, which in the 48th season is when Leo has directed two of the shows, and Simon Scott has directed another of the shows. So just as we do today, where some of the core company comes in, not only are they performing, but they're also directing as well. So this is when this process sort of starts to establish
And
themselves,
sometimes also writing.
in writing as well. So Richard and Helen, they're writing, and and everybody's directing, and they're, it's again the company effort to get all of
So after biography, then we go into this another midsummer festival of
of,
great plays,
of
which
great
is
plays. So
expanded to 5 weeks from the previous year when it was 2 weeks,
right,
and more ambitious.
and more ambitious. So there are a couple of shows that they're in rehearsals for to put on during this festival, but then they bring back and reperform some of the shows that they've already now put up.
So in the festival, they bring back some shows that they've already done, like Idiot's Delight, Biography, Camille,
Mm-hmm.
The Milky Way, and John Loves Mary. But also they do shows that they haven't done yet,
Right,
like John Loves Mary, The Two Mrs. Carols,
and
State of the
State
Union,
of the
Made in
Union,
Heaven, and Years Ago.
and years ago, and within years ago, and State of the Union, Paul Ballantyne and Helen Casey Bragdon were the leads. And in years past, you really had this chemistry between Leo and Margot, or Leo and Caroline. And they were really the couples that audiences wanted to see. And this year, audiences really fell in love with the chemistry between Paul and Casey. And it was noted upon in articles and reviews that they really had an appeal, and they really would draw the audience in. And Paul Ballantyne was not a a new fresh face to theater. He had a career pretty well established before he even arrived at Peninsula Players. So he
In
was a
New
well
York?
in New York. He had been in 4 Broadway shows before even arriving in Door County, but he he wanted to be there. So Paul started his theater career in 1931, and became associated with the Civic Theater, Repertory Theater of New York, with Eva Le Gallienne. And he was also on tour. He was in 4 different Broadway shows, and Leo and Richard had seen him perform Falstaff in his Shakespeare production, and they went to talk to him. And Paul comes up to them and goes, "Do you guys have any use of me at your theater? I really want to stretch and become more interested in character parts, and not just always the leading man. I really want to dive into that." And they were ecstatic. And Leo said he was trying to figure out how to express ship Paul to Door County right at that moment. So Paul kind of invited himself to the theater company, um, and he had a very extensive career after that. He always
Yeah.
said, he in a reporter, when he was being interviewed later on, he always said, "I was never interested in being famous. or making riches. I just always wanted to be a good actor. And I tried to make choices that would help me to be that.
Hmm.
And so in coming to Peninsula Players, he returns. 48 is not his only season, um, but he really gets that opportunity to play the different roles and doing this 3 shows within a week and really changing things over and having to learn your lines and play these different parts. And eventually, in the 60s, Paul becomes one of the first members of the core company of the Guthrie Theater.
In
So
Minneapolis.
in Minneapolis, where he will then perform with Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy that first season. So all of these people that we talk about, Greg, and with again, I think in the last episode we mentioned again Sam Wanamaker going off and starting another theater company, and then to have now Paul Ballantyne start here, and that he knew about Peninsula Players ahead of time, that this was
Hmm.
something he wanted to be a part of. So the reputation that they have now, that the theater has now, is spoken about in New York and other professional companies.
And also, that's wonderful. One of the things I've noticed over the years in my experience with the players is that a lot of people come up for the season, and something about being there during the season, um, maybe it's nature, being around nature like that, maybe it's the work we do, but oftentimes a lot of people leave the season at the players and go on to do take different directions in their lives or make decisions about their lives that their time up there has allowed. And I always love seeing that happen. And the other thing I wanted to mention, you mentioned that it was noted by reviewers about Paul and Helen about their chemistry, and that kind of history kind of has stayed with the players over the years. There was many years where Gene Sincere and Bob Thompson were quite a couple on stage, and even later with me and Carmen Roman, we just did a lot of stuff together.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of what a company is. So when those who do take like introduction to theater in college, you start to learn about when you have a company, you have sometimes an actor director who forms a company, or you have your main lead, your female lead, and your ingenue, and all of those. There's people that fill those parts that fill in at other within the roles, and that's part of what we are. That's part of
Yeah.
the players is what
So
we're doing.
in '48, they finished the Festival of
Mhm.
Plays, the 5 week festival, and they take a little bit of break on August 25th.
Right, because Leo's needed at the Door County Fair to help judge the Miss Door County pageant. And so Leo needs to go take care of that and participate in the community event. And then after, when years after that show, then they do come back and do their review. So they close out their season with another review that has become very popular. And during the season as well, Caroline, being a community spirited person, has also asked Gene Sincere and the cast to make a plea and passed a donation hat, like passed a hat, passed a can amongst the audience for the Door County Hospital Auxiliary Fund. And throughout, and I'm not sure when they started it. I don't know if it went on all season or just for 1 month or 2 weeks, but they raised $160 for the auxiliary, and the auxiliary was very grateful and said it was one of their most successful fundraisers that year because Peninsula Players and Caroline participated and were able to add to the kitty. So,
And speaking of some of the 48 company members, you talked about Paul Ballantyne. Another person of note was Ted Bird.
yes, we our friend Ted Bird, who I adore, joined us, and he was an apprentice interested in technical theater who applied from Oklahoma.
And
And
I also want to add that Ted started in 1948, and he is still today on our National Advisory Council after serving on our board for many years. So he has remained very connected to the players.
very, very much so. And Ted joined us from Oklahoma and took a bus and was greeted by Caroline on Highway 42 and has wonderful stories that I
And
look.
we will be doing an interview with Ted where he can talk about his introduction to the players and some of his experiences there, especially in those early years in the 40s.
Right, especially with the canopy overhead and everything. He was there, and so was Jim McKenzie was also there with him that year, and Simon Scott was returned, and Francis was back doing scenery, and
And
we
there was
also
someone named J. Williams Macy.
James Williams Macy is an interesting character, and he was there a previous season and comes back in other seasons. He's a monologuist, like does monologues like it humorously out east, and sort of like Will Rogers had his routine and homespun humor. And he gets cast. He's an older gentleman, and eventually he becomes an editor for Field and Stream. So he's just had this fascinating career of, and it just kind of popped out at me. I'm like, this the people that those Fishers attracted to come work with them.
Yes. So during the winter of 48, 49, Caroline had some changes. She was ill.
She was ill towards the end of the season and had to stay around Door County for a little bit longer. And Rodian had taken up a different flight schedule. So
For TWA.
for TWA, so he's still flying. And at some point, they had purchased a home in Wells. And so they were selling that home to move to Long Island because now Rodian is flying from New York to Cairo.
Hmm.
So he has those international flights. And in the meantime, while that's going on, Richard is on a ship sailing to France because he's, during his travels, met a French playwright, and they're going to work together all winter translating each other's works. So
And Jean Sincere is going back to New York.
he's going back to New York and continuing there. And
And she's going to
oh,
be supposed to be in a new musical called Moll Flanders by Deems Taylor, which, like many projects in New York, does not take off.
does not exactly. So I think she was signed to like workshop it and do some other things. And they were able to do one of their productions and extend Jean's participation in that season because somebody she had gotten notice that rehearsals weren't starting when they were expected to for that project. So she could stay a little bit longer and work with the players a little bit more. So
So they disperse again during the winter on all these various projects and lives, and then they start prepping for the 49 season.
which is even
Um,
more ambitious than the ones they've done previously.
and how many shows and how many nights a week?
They're going to do 11 plays in 10 weeks, 6 nights a week, the entire season for the most part. So 59 performances total. And again, I
This
have to
is,
make a graph for each of these because I had a hard time wrapping my brain around it. So, oi, off we go.
yes. So over the years, they've gone from the last season in 48 was 5 nights a week. Now it's six, which is what we are now.
Right,
We have Monday is our day off usually during a season, but back then it was Wednesday.
Wednesday. And this is because I'm not sure when they became associated with Actors Equity. So they were using Wednesday as the company day off in the middle of the week. So then the
And
company
there's some shows they think about doing.
there are again some shows they think about doing, and it's announced that Leo and Helen will be featured in The Guardsman. Um, Margot's going to be returning this year, and they've got some new returning also is Paul Valentine and Jean Leslie and Simon Scott and Philip Swander, who was with them a few years before the war, is returning as well. And they've also got a new company member from Iceland that joins
And
them.
can you say his name?
I don't know if I can. Torkelson. I can get the last name. Is it
Thorkelson, yes.
Torkelson? I
Yngvi.
can get.
And and he came from Iceland.
He is a native of Iceland, and where Caroline and Richard met him, I'm not sure, but I have found that he was in America studying theater because he was going to take it back to his homeland, to Iceland, um, to incorporate it there. And I did find some scenery credits, like he was more of a technician and technical aspect of theater. He did some scenic designs out east before joining Peninsula Players. And in doing research for Icelandic theater, there is a national theater that was founded in 1950. I don't know if Mr. Torkelson was part of that. I am going to say yes in my heart because of knowing everyone else's love of theater that those Fishers were associated with and every place else that they've started. So, and we
And then there were a couple other people that came this into the 49 season that were new. Gene Boland.
Boland came from University in Iowa and also a student at the Goodman, and Bill Munchow. So William Munchow joins the company for the first time, and he is recently a recent graduate of Lawrence University and a native of Appleton. Like
And Bill ended up, this is 1949, he ended up being part of the Players till 1984.
he had more than 100 roles on the Peninsula Players stage, and that is an amazing accomplishment.
Indeed. And this Gene Boland, who you just mentioned, who was new to this 49 season, this is where we think she met Jim
Yes,
McKenzie
this is where Jim and Jean met, and they eventually get married. So,
and had three children.
yes, and they're going to become an important part of carrying on the Fisher family tradition.
Indeed. So, Light Up the Sky opens the season on June 30th, which I believe is the earliest they'd ever opened.
It was, yes. So they are opening at the earliest, and the longest that they're going to have an attraction the same length of time. So the first show is going to run 5 nights. So we're not quite up to the same production being done 6 nights a week, but we at least now have the same production 5 nights a week. So
Hmm.
the first show runs that long, and then they're going to perform 6 nights a week. But again, Richard wants some visitor to Door County to be able to see 3 shows in a week. So they're running one till a Sunday. Monday and Tuesday they do a different show. Take Wednesday off, open another show on Thursday that runs till Sunday, and that is the schedule for the entire rest of the season.
I'm tired just thinking of it.
I did too. I looked at that and I was just like, Ted, I want to go, Ted, how did you do that? But it was an entirely company effort. And Bill Munchow has, in memory books, said that they would help with strikes. So he remembers being part of striking the set, painting the set, and helping. And it was an entire company effort to
And
get that
that
done.
tradition has stayed to this day. I go into the rehearsal hall the last day of rehearsal, and I talk to the acting company and ask them if they're willing to participate in striking the set. They don't have to at all, but most of the company does. And actually, if it wasn't for their help, we wouldn't get it done in the short time that we have available to us.
Yeah.
And it's actually it's a lot of work, but it really is an important part of what makes the company of Peninsula Players every season.
Yes. There is a real um, camaraderie in regards
Hmm.
to that, and nobody knows the schedule. So looking at this schedule, nobody knows what we go through except another player. And so, and again, Bill Munchow had once said that it was really felt like I was in the army again because there's this camaraderie amongst all of us that we're going to get through this mission. And we know, and he was the person who coined "once a player, always a player,"
Hmm.
because of this camaraderie experience of getting through these changeovers, getting through doing 3 shows a week, and everything else.
So in 1949 they do again a very ambitious season that goes the earliest June 30th, and this one goes into to September 5th.
To September 5th, exactly. So they're setting up that expectation of ending a show on the holiday weekend, which
And again, it's a mix of shows from.
fresh off of Broadway, Light Up the Sky was just on Broadway the year before, and it's the show that kind of the producers, the musical is sort of based on. It has to do with a Broadway producer and
Mhm.
impresario, somewhat based off of a real life person, in his world. And then they go to Petticoat Fever and several other shows that are exactly that. And then they also do Wilderness
By Eugene O'Neill.
by Eugene O'Neill and Amperthon 38. Now, we're going back to some classical Greek costuming, and Leo plays Jupiter, and so that Richard still loves those classics and intelligence, and then they also have You Can't Take It With You. So they're doing a lot of entertaining. The Barker is set in a carnival and has a musical atmosphere to it. But yeah, You Can't Take It With You
And then during You Can't Take It With You, Bill Munshaw had a story about C.R. Fisher, Caroline and Richard's father, who was in the show. And this is what he wrote. C. Rayburn Fife, the old Gramps. They always had him in the program, and they made up some plays for him. Veteran and distinguished character actor, he's been with the company since the start. He did some of the most interesting characterizations, and that was his bio. In You Can't Take It With You, he had a little scene where he had to come in with an ant colony that was supposed to last about a minute. So he came in with the ants, and this one little scene lasted about 15 minutes. They couldn't get him off the stage. He went on and on. I thought he was talking in Sanskrit. Sanskrit, that 1 minute cameo. And that's what Bill Muncho wrote about
His
C.R.
memory.
Fisher.
And it was so fun to see. It's like, well, that's where some of the not just Lydia, but the combination of the two, Mama and Papa, having those brilliantly talented children.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, but
So they end the season with another review.
yes, they
It's
do.
better to give.
Yes, and
And that was, talk about that review. That was pretty ambitious, also.
it was. They had every member of the company, and they were doing song and dance routines. And I believe there was a fisherman that was chasing Margot across the set in between each scene change. And it was, and Philip Swander got to sing and use his beautiful tenor voice. And it was just, it was very nice. It
Bill
was
Muncho.
and Bill Munchell got to oh yes, Bill got to introduce his Mona Lisa sketch, and he it was a sketch that they would return then year after year. But Bill, with his plastic clown face, was dressed as the Mona Lisa in the museum, and patrons of the Louvre would just have to play the straight man. Well, Bill as Mona Lisa would come to life and do things behind them.
And he did that for a while.
He did that for a while, and I'm really hoping some of our guests will be able to expand upon that a little bit more because they got to witness it. So,
So at the end of the season, again, everyone disperses. I think Simon Scott goes on a Shakespearean tour.
he does. He is going to go to again and transatlantic this time. So he's going not just across the United States, but they're going to go overseas as well and present Shakespeare to audiences. And and Paul Ballantyne, after that season, he ends up in Boston for the next couple of years, doing Shakespeare with the Brattle Theater Company, and he's performing with John Carradine and Fred Gwynne. So, and most people might remember Fred as Herman Munster. So,
But as I mentioned to you, I saw Fred Gwynne. there was a Stratford Theater Festival in Connecticut for many years, and I saw Fred Gwynn there as the stage manager in our town, and he was excellent.
So yeah, so they're moving on, and so yep, Simon, he's part of the Margaret Webster Shakespeare Company, and then Jean Sincere has an exciting adventure. She has been signed by a record company, Ampre Records, to do a recording, or what the ad says is a waxing. So the technique that's used to make the record was a waxing of "Merry Christmas" by Mako Pinkard, who was the composer of the Harlem Globetrotters theme song, Sweet Georgia Brown. And he was also kind of an important character with the ASPAC, Association of Sound and Music. He was one of the founding members of that organization. So Gene's got a recording.
And so, and I think then we'll wind up with Caroline, who goes home.
Caroline was not part of any of the cast that season, and she went home mid-season because she was expecting another baby. So she went home to rest and and
And that brings
that
us,
news next time.
and that brings us to the end, and we will pick up next time in the 50s. So, Audie, once again, my pleasure to be with you.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
And we'll see you next time.